Hello, everyone. You've reached S.J. Thomason with Christian-apologist.com. And I'm really excited to say I'm here with the most controversial non-believer on social media, the famous Steve McRae. And he is the owner of the Great Debate Community. And he is, oops, I'm getting this. I've got a thing going on here with a different. So anyway, I wanted to welcome everybody here. I want to welcome Steve here. He also is with the Non Sequitur channel. He works with Kyle Curtis quite a bit, and they do a lot of good work out there. They're putting a lot of videos out. They become pretty famous. And so without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce Steve. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself, actually?
That was like an 80s phone recording. You call somebody up, you get, hi, you've reached, and yeah, by the way, Kyle Curtis, Kyle, he can go by either one. It doesn't really matter. That's why he has two first names. I don't know why his parents did that. Hi, yeah, glad to be here. I woke up special for this. So, and I made coffee too, special for this. By the way, you can't see it in there, but that actually is coffee in there.
Oh yeah.
The magic cup.
That cup looks wild. How did you, it's almost like it's invisible. It's so weird. Where'd you get that?
I bought an invisible cup. They do have them. No, it just happens to be the same color as my green screen.
That is really wild. I like that. So, so yesterday, well, actually, I've been noticing on Twitter over the last, I would say 3 years that you are in a lot of debates, and it seems like you sort of like it. And I think you like it when people, especially when people want to say that agnostics and atheists have, there's no distinction, or else they say that they can be an agnostic atheist, and you say that that's really not possible. So I thought maybe first we'd start off with what your definition is of agnostic and atheists, because there's a definition of an atheist being a person who either lacks a belief or they don't believe in God. So what would you say to the lack of believers?
Well, at first, I don't get in debates on Twitter. When I use the word debate very specifically, anybody else can use it any way they want. But I've only had 4 or 5 formal debates, and I use that word very specifically. When in fact, when I do a debate, I take my time. I do presentations. I've never lost a debate, and that is not me bragging. If you actually go watch my debates, my first opponent left young Earth creationism. I would call that a win. My second opponent left during the middle of the debate, and things like that in nature. So I consider those to be definitely wins. When it comes to like the controversial, like I don't think I'm really that controversial in any really kind of substantive way, because all I do is I say what I want to say, when I want to say it, how I want to say it, to whom I want to say it. And I'm just not beholden to any ideological position. I'm not beholden to any political group. I'm not beholden to any agenda besides promoting of good science and critical thinking. And so there are a lot of people out there that have been so, and I hate to use the word indoctrinated, but it does kind of fit, or at least they've been conditioned at the very least to think a very specific way because of some of the things they watch on YouTube. And so when they hear something that's contradicting that, they have like a Pavlovian knee-jerk reaction, right? They have this response like, oh, I've listened to these people for quite some time. They've all put out the same information. Here Steve comes along. He's saying this. He cannot be right. So they pretty much by fiat think that I am not correct in the things that I say, yet they don't seem to recognize that every expert that's out there, all the people that I know, and you do know, I know a lot of well-educated people, you don't see them going around saying, oh, look, Steve's wrong on all this, right? You never see that happen, because I get messages frequently from these experts saying, Steve, continue what you're doing. You're helping people understand these things. We support you. So I don't know if I'm really that controversial. I think what it is that you have two groups on the internet. You have the ones that want to learn. You have the ones that want to understand these concepts. They're the ones that come to me and become Patreons and become followers on my channel and become friends. And then you have the ones that just want to have these narratives that they put out there, regardless whether they're true or not. So when it comes to these definitional things, all I do is I explain to people how words are used in the fields. Okay, so in philosophy, these words have specific usages, right? It's not that one is more correct than the other. It's not that one is, the only definition out there, right? People have laid these charges against me that Steve pushes only one definition. No, there are 6, 7, 8 definitions. I can come up with these words off the top of my head. It's all how you want to use them. And if you use them a certain way, there's baggage that goes along with them. That's it. If you accept lack of belief atheism, there's baggage that goes along with it. That's what I discuss. And when you're talking about things like agnosticism, they're conditioned to believe because of David Silverman in his book Fighting God, and he goes around saying, well, you know, if you're agnostic, you're an atheist, whether you like it or not. Tough crap, right? Well, we all know that he's wrong. I mean, any academic person that ever has looked into any of this stuff knows he's fundamentally wrong. But he has a political agenda to have. I mean, he's even said this is a political agenda that he does. So these words, the way I use them, all I'm doing is I explain to people how, if you go to college and you want to become a philosopher, or if you want to write a paper or even read a paper in context, you're not going to be using David Silverman's uses of these words. You're not going to be using atheist experience uses of these words. They don't find them in academia. You don't find them in university level. What you're going to be finding is the way I'm explaining them. And I'm just flabbergasted and fluxumed that there are still people out there that are arguing against me for using words appropriately and how they would be used in academic context. So that's my opening spiel there.
No, that's good. So you would say, if you had to kind of sum that up, so you would say that the atheist experience and David Silverman, who was formerly running the American Atheist Group, you would say that they've created the lack of belief idea. They're creating the idea or the narrative that atheism is a lack of belief, rather than saying that it's a not belief in God. And I think you might have pointed out one of the reasons why they do that is to shift the burden of proof over to the believer.
Yeah, there's a couple reasons they do it. First, when it comes to these groups, what they're trying to do is they're trying to artificially inflate the number of atheists out there for political reasons and political power. I get that. I really do. That's an argument from consequentialism. And there's something to be said for that. Dr. Paul Draper in Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, on his paper on atheism, he notes this. And Genetically Modified Skeptic, he uses the same argument. And I can't fault him for it. I mean, if that's your agenda and you want to artificially inflate these numbers by saying, hey, look, there are a lot more atheists out there than there was before because we're going to change the definition to include them. While I think that's intellectually dishonest, it makes sense from a political point of view, right? Because you want to get political power. I've never argued otherwise on that. So it depends on what your goal is, right? But my goal is not to change the political landscape. And if it is, it's to do so by what I consider to be more intellectually honest means, because I think I'm not a Machiavellian type person. I don't think the ends justify the means on a lot of these things. And especially if they lead to contradictions, if they lead to absurdities, if they lead to category errors, which they do. So they're not trying to change the definition. What they're trying to do is incorporate what a guy named Anthony Flew in 1972 wrote a paper called The Presumption of Atheism. And it was a very, very bad argument. Most scholars back then didn't put much stock into it. They rejected it outright. But his argument was, hey, look, atheism is the belief that God does not exist. He fully admits in his paper, he mentioned it more than once, but he wants to change it to negative atheism, which is basically anybody who doesn't know how to have God belief. And he relates it to the innocence of a person, that we assume a person is innocent rather than, guilty, or there's a presumption of innocence there. And there's a reason for that in our legal system, right? Because we don't want judicial errors. We don't want an innocent man to go to jail. We don't want a free man to go free. But we value the fact that it is more egregious, more a judicial error for a innocent man to go to jail than a free man to go, a guilty man to go free, right? So there's a reason why we have a presumption of innocence there. That doesn't apply with atheism. There's no reason, there's no extra circumstances to say, look, we have to presume there are no gods. There's just no reason for that, philosophically speaking. There's no default there. So what they're doing is just trying to incorporate this old 1972 negative atheism approach that Dr. Martin, Dr. Flew, and a guy named Stephen Bullivant kind of promoted. And the problem I find with that is that the American atheist experience, while they're perfectly fine to do that, they actually at the same time call themselves positive atheist. And the reason they do that, they want to put a positive spin on it, right? And I get that, but it's very confusing because positive atheism to anybody in philosophy means somebody affirms God does not exist. So they're negative atheists affirming positive atheists, and they're changing all these different words from what you would find in the literature, right, in the books that none of these I've read. And so that's what I think leads to confusion. And when people that are not well read on these topics, people that don't go and actually look at for themselves what these words are being used in the literature, that's the only source they get. Right. And they're so confused by it. You see me on Twitter trying to explain these things. They look at me like does in a headlight. They just don't understand what I'm saying. And then they put the problem on me, which leads to confusion. And as you said, controversy, but it's not. I've been pretty standard for years. I say things that are pretty basic. It's not even that controversial.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think that the way you say it and you explain it very well on Twitter, I think it's kind of funny because people do seem to want to come after you. And I feel like you are one of you're kind of like Adam friended in that you've attracted, or you've got your own
Ouch.
group.
She compared me to Adam Friended. No, it's okay. I happen to get along with Adam. I know a lot of people don't, but it's so cool.
Well, that's what it is. What's funny about him is because he's an atheist, but he's totally against anti-theists, and you're what you call, I think you said you're a temporal agnostic, and sometimes you have this little wedge between you and an atheist, and I think it's really interesting. And so, like for example, when you mentioned the atheist experience, are you and Matt Dillahunty on better terms these days?
No, okay. And I, by the way, I'm gonna get back to your burden of proof here. I didn't mean to cut you short on that. I do want to talk about the burden of proof at some point, but here's the thing with Matt. Matt's been on the show, the Non Sequitur show. I asked him questions about agnostic atheism prior to the show. He reaffirmed that he thinks agnostic atheism in the weak case is nonsensical, which I figured that he would. But I really had no contact with him before or after until, I said something on Twitter and he messaged a tweet and he said no. That's all he said was no. And I was like, well, what's no? What does that mean? Right. Here's the thing. Look, if you're going to try to correct me, give me some reasons why you think I'm wrong, especially somebody like Matt and especially somebody like me who's not just spewing out garbage. Right. And so we had about 5 or 6 exchanges. I know it was on multi-value logic. And all he did was he was just throwing platitudes out there and idioms like, oh, the person who makes the positive or the, what he said was, you believe or you don't believe. Well, yeah, no kidding. Right. I mean, it's like, why are you telling me things that I hear every day, Matt? This is like first grade stuff here. And that was it. It was just 5 or 6 tweets and he blocked me and I haven't heard from him since. And then he goes on to other shows saying, well, Steve's saying this, Steve advocates this, Steve claims this, none of which I do. He has my positions all wrong. Everybody's told him that. I know numerous people have said, hey, look at Matt, you keep straw manning Steve. You keep on saying he says these things he's not saying. You have his arguments incorrect. But what are you gonna do? I mean, he's a well-known personality and I have the utmost respect for him. I really do. I like him on the Atheist Experience as far as most of his arguments. I think he can adapt. I think his conversation with Rationality Rules was brilliant on objective morality and free will and all this other stuff that he talks about. I think that he changed his position on free will a little bit. And so I know he can change his position. And yet, as somebody very close to me who is well versed in these topics said, hey, Steve, you're all correct on these things, but you're not the one that's going to be changing Matt Dillahunty's mind. If he ever changes on this stuff and realizes that lack of belief atheism is probably not the best way to go on all this, and it's not really academically sound, it's going to be somebody else who explains them, even though that somebody else might have gotten a lot what they've learned from you. And that's, so, and I agree with that. That makes sense. I'm not going to be one changing Matt Dillahunty's mind. So we're never going to have a conversation on
it. Well, you had him. I did watch that debate. That was with him in Inspiring Philosophy, and that was I thought it was a knockdown, remarkable debate. So
that was good. Yeah, I like IP. Yeah,
I bet you've had a lot of people viewing that on your channel because that was actually really interesting. So
yeah, IP was getting a little drunk. If you noticed during the end of the debate.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, he was kicking a little bit, but no, I thought that was a brilliant discussion. And this is why I invite a lot of those theists on the program, right? This is why we have conversations with people like IP and you're a theist, and people like will criticize us sometimes for having certain guests on and criticize us for whom we have as moderators and whom we have conversations with and who we talk to. And I find that to be the most strangest thing, because
you're getting heat for having me as a moderator.
I get flack for that, and
you get it a lot.
Look, this is my position, and I hope people understand this. If we isolate everybody, we're not going to have conversations with anybody, right? And I'd rather have somebody like SJ, who I disagree with on certain things. We've had our knockdown battles. We discussed. I don't think she's an idiot by any stretch of imagination. She's articulate. She's intelligent. She's educated. We just have some disagreements. That's the kind of interlocutor I want, right? That's the kind of person I want to have conversations with, because even if I can't change SJ's mind, maybe somebody who's watching might change. She might change somebody else's mind too. We both are trying to change minds. And we can't do that if I say, look, SJ has said some things I disagree with, I'm going to block her. That's just stupid. I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to do that if she starts coming after me personally, which she's never done. So.
Yeah, no, I like you. I get along with you pretty well. So I think, and I enjoy intellectual debates too. And I think you're obviously a pretty intellectual person, actually highly intellectual, I would say, very well spoken yourself. In fact, that reminds me, where can you share with the viewers what your background is? Because I think you're involved in some sort of nuclear science or something like that.
I dropped out of school in third grade and basically just read coloring books. Yeah. No,
But weren't you in the military? You served in the
yeah,
military and you did some.
I joined the military in 1987. I went to Naval Nuclear Power School, Nuclear Field A School. Basically, it's 3 years of nuclear training and courses in college crammed down to about a 2-year long program, a little under 2 years. Well, that's the whole qualification period. Your schooling is a little bit less than that. Then you go to the fleet and you have to qualify. But basically, you get certified to operate a nuclear power plant and train people to operate nuclear power plants. I was qualified on S1C, which is submarine first generation combustion engineering, and D2G, destroyer second class General Electric reactor core systems, both defunct now. So everything I learned is completely irrelevant, right? Because who the hell cares? If I told you that it was classified to the thickness of the niobium coating around the zircon oxide fuel pellet was 8 microns, are you going to care? No, right? I mean, it's just not going to care. Sorry.
Well, we probably don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. So everything I learned about the nuclear field was very, very specific to these type of reactor core systems. So it really was irrelevant nowadays, although we had to learn theory. So I did take additional 2 years of college. I took astronomy, I took biology, I took accounting, I took computer programming, I took history, I took English, I took critical thinking. I took a wide variety of just kind of general courses and some specific in physics I took, and calculus I took. I was all over the place. I mean, I had a full schedule for actually I took more than 2 years because I went back and I took some higher level courses, but I didn't finish my degree. So I have 124 semester hours of college, which is
And that's what you need to graduate. That's exactly the number.
So I have the equivalency of a bachelor's degree. And I'm not ashamed to say, look, I think that I do have the equivalence of a bachelor's degree. I just don't have that piece of paper. So I don't say that I have a degree. I'm not, a college graduate, but I can definitely say for a fact that I have enough credits and experience where I would have the equivalent of any person with a bachelor's degree in the nuclear technologies or just, in general education. So I don't think I'm an uneducated person.
No, I wouldn't say that at all. And you can see that with how you converse with people. So I think that's become pretty obvious. So I want to ask you, you mentioned a little bit on rationality rules, and I wanted to see what's your take, or do you have an additional opinion on that particular topic that you want to share?
I happen to be a big fan of rationality rules. I think that he's very brilliant. He's one of the most knowledgeable laypersons that I know of. He's like me. We were kind of self-taught in a lot of things, and he gets it spot on. And we've had our conversations, mostly in private. Like 99% of our conversation, him and I just talk on DMs that nobody ever see, but they're really, really interesting. And he had a controversy recently with the whole transgender thing, and of course that blew up in everybody's face. But I think that he's an honorable person. I think he's honest. I think he's intellectually honest, and I think that he'll fix whatever he gets wrong. But he can articulate arguments very, very well, and he doesn't just pass me off. For example, Alex O'Connor, right? One of his friend.
Yeah.
So I mean, Rationality Rules will message me, and he'll be like, "Hey, have you watched Alex's video or something?" And we'll talk about it and say, "Look at, what do we think Alex is off on this?" Because I was talking to Rationality Rules, and I said, "Look at, I love Alex. Don't get me wrong; he's a genius kid, but he says things that are just strange sometimes. Like he was arguing that to me, he was telling me in email that he was a motivist, which is a non-cognitivist position. It's a moral non-cognitivist position, right? And he was also saying there's a moral subjectivist, which is a moral cognitivist position. And it was just really, his ontology was really all over the place, right? And it was also seemed to go into what's called ethical subjectivism, or no, he was a subjective reductionist. And so I was kind of pointing this out to Rationality Rules, and he was kind of noticed the same thing. And now I come to find out that Alex has kind of changed his position on all this. He's modified it and he's refined it because he's going to Oxford now. He's learning about these terms. But at the time when I was making these criticisms, people were coming down on me going, "Oh, Steve, you're wrong. Alex is completely right." I'm like, "You don't even know what Alex is talking about. You don't even know what he's talking about. You're just saying he's right because you like him. That's tribalism, because I was pointing out you cannot be an emotivist and moral subjectivist, moral realist, or whatever at the same time. I mean, he's not a moral realist, but I think that he's kind of moved. I think he's moved into the position that moral realism is probably not as bad as he thinks it is, because Rationality Rules is a moral realist. And he's an
That's
atheist.
interesting.
Yeah, an
Yeah.
atheist. He's more a realist. Oh,
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know that much about. Now I actually watched Alex O'Connor in a debate with Frank Turek, and have you seen that debate?
oh yeah, he creamed Frank. Sorry,
Oh, you thought so? I
I
thought it was.
did. Oh yeah, no, I
I
yeah.
thought
Oh
it
come
was the
on.
opposite.
No, Frank seemed lost in that discussion. I think Alex made some very good points. But you know what? We should review it one of these days. You and
Yeah,
I.
we should. That'd be
That'd be
fun.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, because I watched that. See, of course it's one of those things where you and I could watch the same debate and come across with two different opinions because we're sort of. I mean, we come in there with our preconceived notions on which one we want to win, and so a lot of times that aligns with which one we decide won. But I have seen some debates where I would definitely admit that the Christian didn't do as well, but not that particular one.
Yeah, no,
So.
and I get that as well. But here's like, I'm I'm kind of less in that tribalistic camp. If I, you know me, I'm happy to go after an atheist. I think makes some fundamental mistakes, right?
Oh yeah,
I'm
you
not,
are. That's
yeah,
what makes you interesting.
I'm not trying to promote atheism, right? I'm not even promoting agnosticism, and I'm the Pope of agnosticism, right? That's not my agenda. My agenda is not to convert people, philosophically speaking, into anything. My agenda is to get them to understand the concepts, think about them, and then formulate their own beliefs and own positions based upon that. And if it's sound, if it's rational, if it's cogent and has consistency, then I'm okay with that. They can think whatever they want, right? Because you and I can look at two different things, like you said, and there's really no right or wrong answer, right? There's just what angle are we looking at something? And I think a lot of people don't understand in philosophy. A lot of positions are just, what do you want to pick? You know, there is no right or wrong answer. I mean, if I'm a realist and you're an idealist, what objectively could we ever look at to say one of us is right and the other of us is wrong? You can't. That's the whole point of philosophy. It's just, what do you want to go with, and do you have a internally consistent framework? That's all. I mean, certain things, if you pick one position, you kind of have to go with some other positions, but because it kind of it entails them a little bit. But if there's no right or wrong philosophical position on a lot of these things, it's just, how do you want to view it? That's all.
You're right. Well, it's like, for example, I told my students, I said, okay, for tomorrow, or I mean, for Tuesday, they have to do a test. And I gave them some of the questions because it's a communication class, it's business communication, and it's at the MBA level. And I said that I'm going to give you the questions so you can think about them over the weekend and how you're going to answer these essay questions. So I gave them 6 possible questions. And one is, which is superior, equality of opportunity or equality of outcomes? And I'm just dying to see what they come up with.
Well, that's actually a really brilliant question, because I was talking about something similar to that when it comes to equity and equality the other day. And this kind of goes into that. What's more important? And I was arguing that I think equity is more important, only for the fact that if you have equity, you can get equality out of it. But certain people are going to need certain things. That's not, it does reminiscent maybe a little bit of socialism, but still there are people that need more than other people. They have to be allocated a little bit more. That's why we have things like food stamps. That's why we have things like affirmative action, even though I think that probably needs to be toned down a little bit as more and more people are getting their equal rights. So I think that's a great question. So you had asked your students if the outcome is the equality of outcome or the
Equality of opportunity. So which one's
opportunity.
superior? And so
Without the opportunity, you can't have the outcome.
So yeah, I think it's going to be fun to see what they come up. I mean, I'm really interested because I tend to favor equality of opportunity, but I do understand what you're saying. I do understand there are some people that are just inherently smarter and they're going to be performing better, and and they've shown that if you have high IQ, it correlates with job performance and it correlates with a lot of good outcomes for people, and then the opposite is true for people with really low IQs. So
yeah,
if you've got a 75 or an 80, you're not going to be doing well in life. It's just
absolutely
shown.
No, I agree with that, but it's also, the federally protected characteristics too. I mean, historically, nobody's going to, I don't think, argue that people of color, people, women, minorities, and handicapped people have had at a disadvantage. There's just no question about it, right? And so there needed to be something equity-wise to get them with this, to be in the same equality as people. I mean, if it used to be in the 50s, a man and a woman goes for the same job, that woman's going to have less of a chance to be hired. Right, that was the whole point of second wave feminism, to vote for, to push for voting and push for equality and push for jobs. So nowadays, I think that is a lot less. I think that I honestly think, because I've been in retail for 20 years after I got in the Navy, most businesses tend to prefer to try to hire women over men. I see it a lot.
Oh, I agree with you. And, yesterday, actually, in that same class I was just talking about, we did a debate, and one of the debates was on female representation in corporate boards. And so the idea was like in Norway, for example, they actually have quotas of 40%. The corporate boards have to be 40% female. And so I asked the class to take sides on that. And so, because I kind of assigned them, I said, you guys are going to take the for position, and you'll take the anti position. And it's just really interesting because to me, I'm against quotas. But we don't see that many females. Only like 12 to 16% females in the boards right now. So it's kind of interesting.
There's pros and cons of quotas, and that's an argument to be had, right? Because one, quotas do help establish equality by giving people equity, and I understand that. I'm actually for that a little bit, at least at one time. However, nowadays, as people are getting more equality, quotas need to be start phasing out. You can't, they're not meant to be existing for a long period of time. They were a tool to get people that were disenfranchised and had not have the same opportunities as other people because of their economic status, their political status, their gender, their whatever it was about them that was a federally protected class. They were at a disadvantage. So the quotas were there to help alleviate that, to help fix that. It was a remedy, is what it was. And so after a period of time, that remedy has to go away. Because if not, now you have a tipping of the scale the other way, and then you have unfair advantage. So, yeah, I agree with you. Quotas are good and bad. It just depends on how they're being utilized, if they're needed, and there has to be a time where you have to say, you know what, now we need to go, and we just need to hire people because of their qualifications. And you know what, do like John Rawls had the veil of veil of ignorance. I think he called it. Just don't care about the gender, don't care about their political persuasion, don't care about anything but their job function, and I think that's how people should be generally hired at some point in time. Maybe not.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, because I wouldn't want to be. What if I were put on a board and I found out that it was because I was filling a quota?
Right? It makes you feel like, oh well, I didn't get here because of my skills. I got here because I was a girl. That's the same reason why I didn't get there as a guy. If somebody said, "Hey, Steve, we hired you because you're a male over this female," God, what an ass I would feel like, right? I wouldn't want that.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm still making the bank, but whatever. No, I would feel bad about that.
No, that's what I think, and it's interesting because we're seeing it in other countries too: France, Germany, Belgium. There's all these places where we're seeing these quotas coming in, and some of them are enforced with pretty strict enforcement. So I don't think it would ever fly in the United States just because of the way our politics are. But
probably not.
It's an interesting thing to think about. Anyway, you can see my dog.
Yeah, you dog, right?
Little Pepper, she's adorable.
I just got to keep muting. I got kind of a little cough for some reason today. I think it's the outside air. It's not the greatest today.
So are you going to, I was wondering, do you ever travel to any of those atheist conferences? Like I noticed that the American Atheists had something big in Ohio, and then there was that thing in Texas, that Faithless Forum, I think it was called.
No. First of all, like I said, the people that go to those, and half of them I get along fabulously, a couple of them I don't, obviously. But they're there to promote an agenda, right? They're promoting atheism. And that's not my shtick, right? Now, granted, I'd love to go for the social thing because, I do have actual friends in those communities, but I probably might go one day on something, but it's just nothing that I really have much of an interest in, right? I mean, it's like saying, hey, Steve, we're having a NASCAR event, and even though it might be my friends, I'm not interested in NASCAR, so it's nothing that I'm gonna go to, even though I would qualify, because those events are not just for atheists, they're for non-believers, and of course I'm a non-believer, so I would qualify. And a lot of them, like, oh well, you're agnostic, therefore you're atheist. So in their minds, I'm already one of them, which is bizarre because I keep telling them I'm not, but they get to tell me what I am. And then which is weird because, again, people like Matt Dillahunty will say, well, people should label themselves the way they want, but you need to label yourself the way I do because you can't say you're an agnostic and non-atheist kind of thing. It's like, why not? And then he'd be like, well, Steve's going around telling atheists they're not really atheists, that they're agnostics. That's not what I do, Matt. Stop telling people I do that. I've never relabeled anybody. If you think you're an atheist and you want to call yourself an atheist by whatever definition you use, knock yourself out. I've never argued otherwise. I never said, hey, look, you're not a true atheist, you're an agnostic. That has never been an argument I've ever had. Stop saying it is. But no, I don't really go to those events. My big thing is, like, I'll have a friend come down to visit me. I have a couple of friends that have literally come down to where I live now, and we've headed out and had the most greatest times. Recently, Ruhif came down, if you know him, Glenn.
No, I don't think I do.
He's an Australian bloke. he's done very well for himself in Australia, and he has the freedom to travel. So he flies out here once a year, and he just recently came up here, and him and I went to Palmdale, California, and did a video on debunking some of these flat Earth videos. So we took surveying and did a lot of cool stuff. And his video just came out this morning. So if you go to Ruhif's channel, check that out. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy. But I don't go into groups. I'm not a sociable person in real life. Can you tell?
No, I actually think you seem very sociable, because you get on these you get on lots of channels and you're on chatting with people and having a good time. So you strike me as an extrovert, actually.
I you know what's funny is I really am an introvert, a lot, actually, believe it or not. But when I go into some settings, if I'm having a drink and I'm chatting up somebody who's intelligent and we're having a great conversation, then I become the extrovert. But if I'm not having somebody as like a wingman or somebody that I'm having a dialogue with or somebody I find interesting, I just sit by myself, type on my computer, and sit down and have a drink at a bar by myself or drink coffee by myself. I'm not really that sociable. I'll ask questions to people every so often, like in my coffee place. I'll be typing something up and I'll be like, hey, you mind if I ask you a question? Especially the people that work there, they all know me by now, right? And I'll be like, hey, what do you think of this? And they'll give me feedback on it, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's good. So what's your day look like? Because one time I was noticing that it seemed like you never sleep. So it was like, because I was noticing one time that a lot of tweets were coming in kind of through the day, and there didn't seem like there was any space of 8 hours for you to sleep.
Oh, first of all, I've never slept for 8 hours. I'm military. Yeah, sleep is I tried it once. It was overrated. My sleeping patterns, I have insomnia. I really do. These are facts. I have insomnia. I have sleep paralysis. I might even have sleep apnea. But I am not a good sleeper. I'll nap a lot. And so what I will do is I'll take a couple of hours nap, and then get up, and I'm up all night long. So I'll probably fall asleep about 6 in the morning, get up around 10, like I did this morning. So I've had 4 hours. And then later on, like before Non Sequitur show, I'll lay down around 3 o'clock, get up about 5. So yeah, my sleep patterns are really, really, my circadian rhythm has always been bad. So when you're wondering why I'm up so much,
you go to bed at 6.
Yeah, 5 or 6 in the morning.
Really?
Well, well, you got to remember, I write my blog, 3 a.m. Philosophy. Guess when I write that?
Oh, are you serious? You write a blog at 3 a.m.?
Yes, that's why I called it 3 a.m. Philosophy. There was a reason behind it.
Oh, that's so fun. Now I have a friend, a coworker, who he's got a 5 o'clock, he calls it 5 o'clock something. I forget what he called it, 5 o'clock reflections or something like that. But that seems like the normal time to be reflecting. And it's 5 o'clock at night.
Yeah, well, so. I mean, I make some errors and stuff like that. That's why I have people proofread it. But I think I get my most creativity at 3 a.m. for some reason. I don't know why. At least I can open my mind up more.
So were you ever a Christian or weren't you a Mormon at one point, or around the Mormon community?
Yeah, I was friends with Mormons for most of my life since I was like 6 years old. And, eventually there was something that happened. I had fallen in love with a Mormon girl, who's still on my Facebook page today, even though she's not a fan of mine. But I joined the church, and didn't work out between her and I. She got married, divorced, and there's reasons why I joined the church, where there was actually very, very personal reasons and feelings what I had about what was going on. But in later on in life, in 2008, when the church started trying to fund against the I don't know if it was against Prop 8 or for Prop 8, but I don't remember the way Prop 8 was worded, but it was the gay marriage thing. But they were against it, right? And then I was like, look, at churches, if you're for or against gay marriage, that's your personal opinion, but churches should not involve themselves in the political process. This is why we have separation of church and state. This is a secular type thing. And so I was like, I cannot support a church that, if this is the true church of God, right? I'm not buying this. I don't believe this. That God would be like, hey, you know what? You need to prevent two people that are happy getting married, and just because they're a gay couple, God's not going to waste his time with. This made no sense to me, and so I fell away from the church, and I looked into the more of the archaeology and other stuff, and realized, I can't believe any of this stuff. It just scientifically doesn't make sense to me. But as far as the concept of a God. Of course, the concept of God is logical. I hate when people say, well, concept of God is illogical. Then you ask them for a proof of that, and they just nothing, right? They don't understand what it means to be logical. Logical just means that it is not a logical impossibility. Like a square circle is a logical impossibility. You cannot have one. But the concept of a God or even life after death is not illogical. They conflate logic with reason, right? Like biologically speaking, you would agree, SJ, I think, that you cannot come back from the dead, right? Biologically speaking.
Right, but and that's part of the reason why I do support Christianity, because Jesus did come back from the dead. So it's not, you're right, it is something that you cannot do normally. Any normal person couldn't do that.
Okay, but it's nothing. There's nothing illogical about saying you can come back from the dead. People that get on me, they're like, Steve thinks you can come back from the dead. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that logically, it is not impossible. From a logic point of view, meaning that there's no logical contradiction to be had there, right? There's no contradiction in coming back from the dead. A contradiction is two things that cannot exist simultaneously, like square circle is a logical contradiction. True false is a logical contradiction. Those cannot exist in any possible world. And so the Christian is saying, yes, we recognize that this is biologically impossible. This is why it's a miracle. This is why we have our beliefs because this doesn't happen every day. Right now, whether I agree with that or not, there's nothing illogical about saying that. People can say, well, it may not be rational, but again, I think that it is rational if you can justify it, right? Rationality depends on your own justification for it. But I think a lot of atheists have these knee-jerk, again, Pavlovian responses to say that, oh, the theist must be by fiat wrong. Oh, it's illogical, it's irrational. Well, you need to give reasons for that. If you say it's illogical, you need to give a logical proof, called a reductio ad absurdum. If you think it's irrational, you need to show why the justificatory condition of the theist is not rational. And I see that very little. I don't ever see people doing that. And that's why I'm trying to help them as atheists. Look, if you're going to go after a theist, this is how you go about doing it, right? You don't just say it's irrational. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's true. Now let me go back to the this idea with the Mormons and just circle back real quick, because I wanted to ask you, were you in Utah by chance when you were?
No, I was actually no. I actually got baptized in Buena Park, California.
Okay. Do they have a pretty strong following in California?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of them. And then I happened to move to Utah, which had no relationship. Well, actually, okay, I moved to Utah because I have a friend up there who happens to be Mormon. And then I stayed with them for a while. I was at work one day. A girl came in. We started chatting each other up. We went out that night, and we moved in together the next day, and we lived together for 5 years.
Oh wow, that's a fast mover.
Why waste time, right? Not the first time things like that have ever happened, but yeah, we lived together for 5 years. I moved out and moved back to California, but I lived in St. George and I lived in Ivins or Huntington area, if you know where that's at.
I don't, but I have been to Utah a few times and I love that state. I have to say, I absolutely love it. It's so beautiful there.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm telling you, if you like fishing and just beautiful scenery and just the outcroppings and the mountains and the bluffs and the Garden of the Gods and all that other stuff, Utah is one of the most beautiful states there is. No question about it.
It is. And I have to say with all of I met a number of Mormons actually, because I interact with a lot of people from Southern Utah University, and they host conferences out there a lot. And so I've met a lot of people who are, and I think they call it LDS, Latter-day Saints, I should probably say. So I've met a lot of LDS people, and they're really industrious, smart, nice people. Yes. I'm very impressed by that group. So I've never had
a problem with the people ever. I mean, in fact, they were the most helpful, kind, generous. My friend's mom and dad, who are no longer with us, who were my second parents, they were the greatest people I think I've ever met in my life. I've also knew, like, Donnie and Marie Osmond, right?
Yeah. You knew them?
Well, I knew their parents, George and Olive. They were customers of mine in St. George. George would come down all the time, take me and my girlfriend out for lunch. He was a big fan of mine because we just had some great conversations. We would go to their little apartment. They'd come down from Branson, and we would talk to Olive Osmond, the mother, and about how Donnie was having conflicts with Sean Cassidy, and and how they were competing for Tiger Beat magazine. And my sister was all into this stuff back in the day, and I was like, okay, I really don't much about this except for my sister was in those controversies, but I was like, this is Donnie Marie's parents, right? And they were treating us so well and just like normal people. They were a nice couple. And I think that when people use pejoratives like cult, I know a lot of the atheists out there love calling Mormons cults. And I push back on that because that word to me means something very pejorative and very detrimental.
I
And
agree.
if somebody that was in Mormonism, somebody who knew these people, they are really amazing people. It's like saying Quakers are cult. They're amazing people, right? And Jehovah Witness, maybe I can kind of get behind that a little bit. My brother was a Jehovah Witness. It is very cult-like. But Mormons, I think they just slam these things together. And even though people might say, well, Mormons have these weird beliefs, okay, but that doesn't make them a cult, in my opinion. But if you want to call it that, knock yourself out, right? But I could tell you right now from personal experience, if you ever needed some help and you needed a friend and you needed somebody that was really, I think, good people, Mormons were some of the best people I ever met. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you with that. And I didn't really know that many until kind of recently. And all of them have just been amazing at these conferences. They're really, really good people. So I'll agree with you there. So I also wanted to ask so you've had Hugh Ross on your channel. Who would you say, and I'm mentioning him because I wanted to know if you have any other plans to have any more theists or Christians coming on your channel who are kind of like him, pretty
I
high
just had one.
level.
Yeah. First of all, he's been on my channel many, many times.
Oh, he has?
Yeah. Oh, he's been on my channel 6 times.
Really? I didn't know that.
Really? I go back with Hugh many, many years. Hugh is a big fan of mine. He's actually mentioned the Great Debate Community in his sermons.
Has he? Now he's
Yes,
in
yeah.
California too. Come to think of it, so
Yeah,
are you near him?
Yeah, I just met up with him a couple months ago.
Oh wow, I didn't
Yeah,
even know
yeah,
that.
yeah. Dr. Kenny Rhodes invited me to go to the AMP convention for Reasons to Believe, and I got to talk to and meet Hugh and about 6 or 7 other professors. But one of them was just on my show, Dr. Jeff Swearink. He's an astrophysicist.
Oh wow,
Reasons to Believe, and he was just on my channel a couple days ago when we were talking about multiverse theory. He really enjoyed that, and also, I've had Fuzz Rana on, and there's a few other that's going to be coming on. I'm talking to Anastasia; she's their publicist, who's become a really dear friend of mine. I mean, we talk every day at this point, ever since our AMP convention. She's a member of the Great Debate Community now. She's actually on the Facebook page.
really?
And,
That's now I've talked to her,
yeah.
Anastasia Young, because I've also had Fuzz Rana and Hugh Ross on my
Yeah.
channel, but
Isn't Anastasia one of the? I mean,
and Ken.
she is amazing. She is professional. She's always on the top of these things. She's been nothing but kind. She loves the Great Debate Community. She loves my channel. She thinks that I'm a fair-minded, intelligent person, and she's more than happy. I mean, they gave me a stack of books that high.
Oh,
Anything I
wow.
wanted to review, because I reviewed Impossible Planet. I reviewed, what was the other one?
So
I
is
don't
Hugh's
remember the
books?
book.
Because I've read
Oh yeah,
6 of Hugh's books.
yeah.
He's books on Genesis.
Yeah, I have that one too. Navigating Genesis. I
Yeah,
haven't read it yet, but I reviewed like Dinosaur Blood and the Age of the Earth by Fuzz Rana. But they want a layperson's perspective. They trust me enough to say, look, Steve's not an idiot. He's not an expert, but this is the target audience we're going for. Steve is the perfect person that we're writing these things for. And, I will be objective as possible. And for example, I told you Improbable Planet, I thought was a good book. His science, I couldn't find fault with, right? Because he's an actual scientist. Now, his conclusions, you could argue, right? That's debatable. And I think he recognizes that. But it wasn't like it was out from left field. And then Dinosaur Blood and the Age of the Earth was strictly, Mary Schweitzer's work and about that kind of stuff. And he's arguing against young Earth creationism, which I do as well. So I think you have to pick your allies. And Hugh and Fuzz, even though I disagree with them extremely on their notion that humans are special creation and evolution, and that there's some kind of an ID going on there. I still rather have them as allies because of the other stuff that I agree with them with, right? Those are the
yeah.
allies I want.
Well, and like Cy Gard, he's another one that I know you've had on, I think
I love
more than
Cy.
once. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
So he's another one I'm a pretty big fan of. So who would you say is who are the other people who are kind of like you as troublemakers on the internet who've been, or is there anyone else like you? Now, the only one I've noticed is Adam Friended, because I think you're kind of unique. That's why I wanted to.
Adam's stick is that he puts a lot of weight into some of the things that Dawkins wrote about on the genes versus memes. And if religion has some kind of advantageous niche in a society, and that's why he's not an anti-theist, right? And a lot of people that talk about this stuff, I don't think they understand what Adam's saying. I don't think they understand that a lot of his work, or a lot of things that he talks about, is actually from Richard Dawkins. And so they kind of just pass it all off to the side. But we had a discussion on the Non Sequitur show with Stated Clearly was it State of Claire? It was JF Gowfrey. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I don't think I know him. I don't.
He's a controversial kind of white supremacist PhD in biology, but he was having a discussion on the genes and memes. But who was it with? Was it? I think it was stated clearly. But there's something. There is a discussion to be had about it, and Adam gets into the real technical stuff on it. But I don't think a lot of people at that technical level to really argue with him. I'm not even. Adams and I have talked about this, and he's like, Steve, you're the only one that even understands the concepts. Do you want to have a discussion on it? And I told him, dude, I'm not at a level to have a discussion on that particular topic. Just because I know the basics and I understand the concepts doesn't mean that I'm going to argue one way or another on that, because I don't have an opinion on genes versus memes. But I think that people just they have, again, this Pavlovian knee-jerk response. Oh, here's Adam Friendly saying that religion has a place in society. It isn't detrimental. It is just like genes. It has these memes that reoccur in society that have a pattern of duplication and reproduction, and it's very similar to biological processes. That's not his own work. That is Richard Dawkins in the Selfish Gene that promoted that. And I think a lot of atheists don't recognize that, and so they're not understanding this is a biological analogy that Richard was using. And I think that a lot of people probably would disagree with him. I think that the book was written many decades ago, and I think nowadays maybe it's not as prevalent. People were saying that it probably doesn't really work, but Adam's still holding on to it, right? But that doesn't make him necessarily wrong. You have to explain to people why he's wrong, and I've never once heard an atheist tell me why Adam's wrong on that stuff.
That's interesting. And I haven't read The Selfish Gene. That's one book I haven't read yet, so I'll have to pick that up. Have you heard about the controversy surrounding Steven Crowder?
Yeah.
So
you mean his demonetization?
Demonetization, yeah, and he had over 1 million followers. I've never listened to his videos or anything, but I just caught that yesterday. But it kind of scares me a little bit, because it makes me think that you spend all these years building up followers, and you're putting out content and doing all that kind of stuff to the point where people stop working, and this is what they're doing full time, and then suddenly the ball drops. And so I think it kind of makes me wonder what the standards are that people need to worry about if you're getting on there.
It's scary because if I got demonetized, I would be screwed. My entire income comes from my channel and Patreon. I have made nothing off non sequitur. We've had non sequitur since December of 2017. There's tens of thousands of dollars in that channel invested out there. I haven't seen a penny of it yet, and so I have to live off my channel. If my channel became demonetized, I don't know what I would do. And it's not. I don't make that much. I live on just enough to pay for necessities and rent. That's it. I don't come out that much ahead. But what's weird is, even if I do come out a little ahead, that's still better than I was doing with 40-hour work week. Think about that. I was making, $30,000 a year. Nothing great, probably 40 if everything was added together. But all my money was shot back then, 5 years ago, because I had a house, right? So when you own a home, you pay property tax, you pay your mortgage. I had a car, insurance. I had 3 dogs. Dogs are expensive, as you know. I had entertainment, and we always ate out, and I always I'd spend $30 in food a day. I smoked, right? It was another 10 to 20
That's
bucks
expensive these days.
2 packs a day. Well, $8 a pack back in my day was $4 or $5. Now it's 8 to 10, right? But that's still hundreds of dollars a month that you spent in smoking. So even though I was making thousands of dollars a month, I had nothing left over by the end of the month. But now I quit smoking, right? I quit smoking 4 years ago, this December.
That's good. Congratulations.
Very difficult to do after 25 years. Trust me.
I can believe you.
And I don't own a vehicle, right? So I don't have to pay for gas. I don't have to pay for insurance. I don't have to pay for maintenance. And so I cut down my expenses. So even though I'm making less, I'm spending less. And every so often I'll go out for a nice dinner. I do treat myself occasionally, and occasionally, again, I have my rum and coke night, so I've got to buy my alcohol. But,
sitting right next to you.
Well, I have rum and coke night, but I bought this ages ago, right? I mean, that's how little I drink. People think I drink a lot. I don't. If I drank a lot, that bottle would have been gone the same day. I know people that can drink all this in a day or two, right?
Ooh.
So I don't drink that much. So this lasts me forever, right? I mean, I bought a rum that was a French, spiced rum, about this size. It lasted me like 4 months, and I usually put it in my coffee is what I'll do, like a capful, just a capful. So I'm very frugal, and with this demonetization thing, though, if it did affect my channel, or even non sequitur, if I ever get some money out of it, which I'm supposed to get like 50%, obviously, it would be very detrimental. So Steven Crowder, like you said, has 1 million subs. What is it about these channels that need to be demonetized? I mean, sure, some of them are controversial, but that's not a reason to demonetize. You want the controversy because guess what? People are watching that. He has 1 million subs, right?
That's it. Well, I even look at Adam Friended. He has his main channel, his Think Club channel, has like 60,000 subs, and he got demonetized last December, and he's been appealing it, and it's never gone through.
Yeah, that's see, it infuriates me because I think YouTube is making some bad political decisions. I think they're catering to the PC crowd, the social justice crowd. And I see a lot of groups doing that. I mean, the whole thing with the ACA, look at the split there because of social justice. You had, John Larrocotti just leave. I think that's how you pronounce his last name.
Oh, John Ioccoletti or something like that?
Yeah. John Ioccoletti, he left.
I didn't know he left.
Tracy Harris and Jen Peoples, the word on the street is they left.
Really? I didn't know that.
And so there's definitely things to be afoot. Now, I've known for quite a while that there's been issues with the atheist community of Austin. I do have an inside track. Multiple people that I know, and I know a lot of people, and so I do have inside tracks. I do admit that, but I can't say a lot of things, obviously, but I can tell you that these controversies are nothing new. These have been going on for quite some time in that organization. Anybody who knows about that organization will know about that. So that's not divulging anything, super secret. But this is just coming to a head at this point. And so I think there is schisms going on. And I'm not the one causing these schisms. People say Steve's destroying atheist communities. I've been kicked out of atheist communities because I was destroying them. No joke. I was just kicked out. I've been kicked out of Atheist Republic, right? Because God forbid I tell people facts.
Wait a second. No, Jim Majors left that too, right?
Yeah. Jim Majors left Atheist Republic. And then I got kicked out of a group called Philosophical Atheism Insiders because I had happened to dare put on my own personal page that I thought their arguments were pathetic. Right? So I was disparaging them on my own personal page. One of the moderators saw it. Another moderator had agreed with me. He got kicked out. He's a mod of my group now.
It's like you're shaking the cage.
I'm thinking, and I told the owner of this group, by the way, who I'm not throwing under the bus because he's been a very cool person. But I was thinking to myself, look, these people have been really trying to get me out of their groups for a while. They wanted me to do something they kicked me out, right? They've even said this, right? I have inside tracks on everything, right? Nothing's private, people, trust me. And so they had to find something. And the thing that they found was me saying that this group had pathetic arguments. That was enough to be disparaging of a group. Look I own the Great Debate community. If you want to say the Great community is crap, you want to say it's full of dumbasses, you want to say it's some of the stupidest people you've ever met, be my guest. You're not going to get kicked out for saying that. You're going to get kicked out for basically trolling is the biggest thing, right? Trolling, I have zero tolerance for. But if you want to be pejorative to a group that you're in, I don't give a crap. Just tell me why, right? But that's
this is what bad arguments. They should improve their arguments. I mean, it's kind of simple.
And that's my goal, is to improve people's arguments. And so I'm telling you, when you see these groups like philosophical atheism insiders, which by the way I recommend everybody don't bother with, obviously now, but this is what I'm saying. They have to shut down communication. They have to shut down arguments that they do not know how to refute. This is what we've seen with American atheists. This is what we see with ACA. This is what we see with Atheist Republic. All these groups that have blocked me and blocked other people. Look at Stephen, like Stephen Woodford, right? I mean, Rationality Rules, instead of having a conversation with them, which by the way they did prior to him going on the ACA that Sunday, they said, okay, you're going to fix this stuff. Everything's fine and dandy. He flies back to England. The next day they put out a fatwa against him.
Yeah, and so the whole split with Rationality Rules is that what drove Tracy and Ioccoletti and everybody else away? Yeah,
because they had board elections. Jamin Boone got reelected, and who is a very nice guy. I mean, he's amazing. And they didn't get what they wanted because the AC had backed up their their statement on rationality rules a little bit, and I think that they got pissed off by that. I was like, this. I think both sides had made errors. Both sides were trying to fix it. There was a meeting of the minds at some point, and I think that's the goal that should be had. You cannot have politically motivated positions and expect to have a harmonious type channel, right? I mean, this group, like the American Atheist Austin, puts out the Atheist Experience, which is supposed to be about atheism. At one time, was supposed to be about critical thinking. I don't think it is any longer. It has now become a politically motivated, agenda-driven, social justice. It's all about
Phobias and isms.
Yeah,
You
it's all
just
about,
say it.
yeah, exactly. It's all about, oh well, you know what? If you don't agree with us, you're a phobic of this.
Yeah,
That's all it is. So,
and I see Red's on here. Hi, Reds.
yeah. Hey, Reds, welcome.
Hi, just given the link, so I thought I'd stop by and see what's up.
Yeah,
awesome.
Well, I just want to say welcome too. I think Steve wanted to have you come on, and one of the things was he was going to. One of the main reasons for this talk is to talk about how controversial Steve is, and so maybe you have a firsthand take on that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, how much detail can I actually go into, because I don't want to piss people off. It's like this is
that is your job. You have one job, Reds, to piss people off, especially flat earthers. That's it.
Well, obviously, okay. Here's the thing. Steve has a certain way of getting to the point. Steve has a certain way of going about things. Basically, he is an asshole, a lot like I am, with very strong opinions. And in order to get him to change those opinions, you need to come out guns blazing. And if your guns aren't blazing, he's going to blaze his guns right back at you, and they will be stronger. And that seems to piss a lot of people off. Now, I have seen Steve kind of, define words differently from other people, and at times just talk past each other. But at the same time, Steve hasn't been wrong on anything once you actually talk to him. And also keep this in mind that even though he may come off as a prick, I think that he actually says a lot of things out of respect. He wants people to have stronger arguments. He wants people to have stronger positions. He wants people to be able to back their shit up in a way that other people cannot refute, or at least if they are going to refute it, they would have to do one hell of a job. Basically, Steve wants to make everyone a better chess player if you're shitty at chess.
Yeah, because I'm tired of people playing checkers when I'm playing chess.
Or just shitting on the board.
Yeah. And that's what I'm seeing, right? I mean, you see the dialogues, SJCs are the dialogues I have, on people with Twitter. I got people coming after me that sound like a 2-year-old trying to explain differential equations, right? I have people that I guarantee have never read a paper on this stuff in their life, have no idea what they're talking about. I have one today literally saying, my goal here is to destroy Steve.
What?
Oh yeah, no, literally, that's what they said. Did you see it? I retweeted it. I was like, okay, I'm so scared. I'm like, really? This person doesn't know anything about any of these topics. See, matter of fact, it's everybody else is even coming down, and I'm going, dude, you don't even know Steve's arguments. He gave me 4 or 5 fallacies the other day. He got them all wrong. Every single one of them he got wrong.
That was the one you told me to help him understand an ad hom?
Yes.
Oh, that's the guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like, don't you feel like sometimes you're arguing with a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old?
No, I feel that no, because 15-year-olds I know are smarter than this. No, they're not even grade school level, and they have the audacity to go, well, Steve's wrong. And every time they think they're making a point, other people have been jumping in going, do you realize that every time you think you're making a point against Steve, you're actually showing your own ineptitude?
Now, here's the thing that I'm finding, and this is why it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge going forward, is that the shift that I am seeing on Twitter and on YouTube in general, basically the entire internet at this point, is that we are in a stage where everyone is prone to be getting offended very easily. Everyone is getting offended, and everyone is working towards getting offended, even though they don't actually know that that's actually what they're working towards. There's a few people that I can mention, but I won't actually say their name as it's taught. Okay, excuse me. Sorry, I don't know what happened. I'm just allergic.
He had like a weird case of Tourette's.
I don't know, something like that. But basically, a lot of people are working really hard to be getting offended when someone says that you're wrong or incorrect on something. And I think that people shouldn't be offended if they just come out and say, hey, you're wrong about this. Don't take it as an insult. Or, hey, I disagree with you. That doesn't mean I hate you. That doesn't mean I wish you nothing but sickness. And, you know, if I do pray to anybody, I'll be praying that you get nut cancer. No, no one's saying that. Basically, you're just wrong. And I'm going to explain to you my reasons for why I say that you're wrong, in the hopes that either you can correct me on my misunderstanding, or you can correct yourself and go forward in life as a slightly smarter individual than you were previously. It's all good, but everyone gets so offended so easily if you don't tote the line just right. You have to have the, and here's the thing, even if you do tote the line, even if you do support people who are fighting for trans rights or the LGBT or any other group for that matter, if you don't toe it in the right way, then you're an asshole. Basically, people are working overtime to get to be offended. They're working overtime for the offense.
Right.
You're absolutely right. The whole idea of victimhood. I don't know if you guys have heard. I'm sure you've heard of Jonathan Haidt and Coddling of the American Mind.
No.
He's got Jonathan Haidt is a psychology professor. He's up at NYU Stern now, so he's teaching ethical leadership. But he came out of the psychology department, and he's written this book, and he's looked at the generation that's currently in college and the ones that in more recent years have been recently in college. And he's just pointed out that a lot of these kids have been raised by helicopter parents, and
Right.
and a lot of them are very fragile.
Oh yeah, they're very protective. Oh yeah, I agree with you. They've been sheltered, right? They haven't been exposed to anything. They haven't, and that's a brilliant way of putting it too. Because when you have helicopter parenting and you have this isolationism where you keep your kids isolated from anything that can harm them, including ideas that you think, you're not doing them any favors, because they in order to build up defenses to bad ideas, you have to be exposed to bad ideas to work on your own critical thinking skills. And these kids, these millennials, have not been exposed to these things, and they cave. They just fall apart like tissue paper.
Yeah.
Well, they have protests. They're actually at colleges protesting anytime anybody comes who's slightly conservative, or people like Ben Shapiro. They go out there and they do these mass mob protests.
But that's not how you have a conversation, right? I mean, you've gotten some flack before because you're not one of these theists out there going, all homosexuals have to die, right?
No, of course not.
Yeah, that's egregious, right? This thing we all agree upon. Yet you have the Matt Powells and Stephen Andersons of the world that are they're just sick, horrible human beings that advocate that position, right? So we're allies in the trans and gay communities because we are fighting against that as well. We're fighting against that kind of stuff, right? We support LGBT rights, but we do it in our own ways, right? We don't toe the exact same position as somebody else supporting it. That doesn't mean we're not an ally. I had like Sarah Michelle on my channel the other night, who I think makes brilliant videos. She's trans, and she just gets right to the point, right? I mean, she expresses the same things I do, right? But she's trans, and yet I'm not, and yet we have the same position. How is that possible, right?
Yeah. Well, on the Ben Shapiro thing, he is very controversial and pisses a lot of people off when it comes to his transgender rhetoric. Listening to Ben Shapiro, he believes it to be something that shouldn't be tolerated, but something that should be treated. Like this is an actual condition that needs to be treated. But one thing,
fixable, which is ridiculous.
I disagree with him completely. But also, what people seem to not understand is what he says directly after that. And what he says after that, he goes, "Listen, I'm not denying that you deserve respect. I am not denying your humanity. I am not denying you as a person. I am not denying the fact that you have rights that should be respected." He says all these clarifying statements. He just has a different opinion than what you and I would normally have. Right. And that is where a good debate can actually come in. And a lot more can be done by not being offended, but by tackling that bad idea with good ideas and letting the best one win out in the end. Now, obviously, I'm not very savvy on this subject, not like what other people are. So other people would be better to debate Ben Shapiro than I would. But that would be a debate that I would love to see happen. And I, for one, would not be offended if it actually did happen. And I would like people to stop protesting if it actually did happen, because basically anyone who wants this shit to go in a way that is, let's say, progressive, then you have to not act like a fucking child, which is regressive.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I agree with Ben Shapiro. He's
look,
I would never want to debate that man.
no, and he is a brilliant debater, right? Like him or hate him, it doesn't matter. He's good at what he does as far as discussions. But those are the kind of people you want to have discussions with. Look, if you disagree with Ben Shapiro, which I do in a lot of things, I want people to have a debate with him. I want people to have a discussion with him who are better at debating than he is, and find those people. Why shut down the conversation? You're doing nobody a favor at that point. Nobody.
Exactly. I would say, okay, well, put your money where your mouth is and go ahead and debate him, but do it in a respectful way. And with the understanding that Ben Shapiro is not, a guy that wants to kill all trans people and stuff like that, because he says over and over, he doesn't deny their humanity. He doesn't deny the fact that they deserve respect. All these good things that he was saying after he said something that, in my opinion, is demonstrably false. But that's where the debate comes in, and the debate can happen on a respectful platform in a respectful environment by not just the debaters, but by everybody. And that's where I think a lot of people are fucking up, because if you do that, you're only holding back progress, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it does people a disservice to lump people like Ben Shapiro in with the Matt Powells and Stephen Andersons in the world. Right.
Oh, that's not right. That's
people say, oh, well, they're both hurting transgender movements or whatever. And you might have an argument to be had for that, but you're talking apples and oranges. I mean, you're talking completely egregious different levels of this person in society. These people are advocating for the death of gay people. Let's think about this. Okay. That's nowhere near the level of Ben Shapiro going, I think it's a fixable order disorder. I don't think it's a real thing. Whatever he's advocating for is nothing compared to that level. Right. So
no,
I don't think, you have to have different categories of these things. Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I think so. If you were to look at those douche canoes that Steve just mentioned previously, then fuck them. No conversation with them. Just mock, laugh, and honestly do whatever you gotta do.
I agree with that. I think mockery is great for certain people, right? Because I don't have any respect for Matt Powell or Stephen Anderson.
No, absolutely not. I mean,
I don't even talk to him out anymore. I stopped talking to him ages ago when I realized he was dishonest and just generous, because he would be asking me questions. I would explain to him. He would understand it. 5 minutes later, he'd go on air and just BS completely what I just said. Well, right? I mean, he just was so damn dishonest. You have no idea.
Well, here's another problem that I'm seeing on the Twitters and the YouTubes and the internets in general, and that is the complete lack of charity. People are automatically jumping to the conclusion that if you say something that is a little out there, that they automatically assume that's coming from a bad place. I didn't want to bring up this example, but I'm going to, and fuck me, I'm going to have to apologize for it later, probably. But the whole definition of an engineer thing. So when Steve McRae said, Katie, in my opinion, you're not an engineer because of X, Y, and Z reasons, it was really an argument of semantics and stuff like that. But wrong or right, Steve was not saying that to be an asshole, was not coming out that for the sole purpose of beating somebody down, I think. So agree with him or disagree with him, I think that Steve McRae said that from not necessarily a good place, but definitely not a bad place. He wasn't going out of his way to say, oh, you can't be an engineer because you're a woman, which is what the assertion eventually turned into. And I'm like, okay, now you guys are full of shit. There was just no charity. At some point there has to be charity with people, and be like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and discuss this with you as an adult and see if we can come to some understanding on what you meant, or try to see where you were coming from. If it is then discovered that you came from a shitty place, then go fuck yourself. But if it comes from a place where it was just really pure fucking semantics with no ill intent behind it whatsoever, then why the hostility? Why a complete douche canoe?
Yeah, no, people don't ask me, hey Steve, what do you mean by that? Why what is the reason behind this? I never got that. It is you're wrong. And then it led into like, oh well, Steve's just being sexist or whatever. What absolutely ridiculous. But nobody, at least publicly, they did privately, but nobody publicly said, hey Steve, what's your reasoning for this? Mm-hmm. And privately, the people that did go, oh, that makes sense now, because I was able to explain it to them about why I have positions that I do, right? And it's the same thing when it comes to like the whole atheism thing and agnosticism thing. People don't have that charity, right? They just have these knee-jerk reactions instead of going, hey Steve, why do you think that way? And by the way, almost not all, but most people that come to me in private that I have long-term conversations with are now patrons of my channel, or now coming to my channel, or now agree with me. I have more people now than ever. They're like, you know what? I hated to say it. I wanted to argue against Steve. I really thought he was wrong. I reviewed what he said. I looked at the logic. I looked at the rationality. He's right. Atheist experience. I'm sorry. You guys are not telling people the whole story. I think a lie of omission is still a lie. And this is advantageous to me, but this is because people are coming to me in private and asking me, because as Red said, when you're on Twitter and you have these, some people have no principle of charity. They think that I'm saying something that's coming from a bad place. It's not. I have reasons for why I say, and if you're not going to ask me those reasons, you're not going to have a productive argument.
Yeah, well,
it's not going to happen.
I agree with you. I think, you know, and it reminds me, you know, it reminds me of, have you two watched the Kathy Newman, Jordan Peterson debate?
I'm aware of it. But
I'm aware of it, but I did not watch it. No.
It is so funny. It is so funny because she gets on. He'll say something like, you know, there's a gender pay gap, but a lot of it's eliminated when you factor in some of these factors like women's choice of jobs and that kind of thing. Right. And then she's like, so you're saying women shouldn't make money?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. So you
automatically, I see stuff like that happen. Exactly. Bingo.
You automatically jump to a really bad place where you start assuming the other person's intent.
Yeah.
And when you start assuming the other person's intent, you can assume whatever you want. And that's the problem. You can assume, you know, it's true. You can assume that they're coming from a good place, but that shouldn't be an assumption that's made. You should withhold judgment until you hear more. That's why I said that's where the charity comes in. Okay, I don't agree with what you said, Steve, but I'm going to hear you out. And then we're going to dive into this one step at a time. And here's also another aspect of it. People have to understand that language is complicated. Certain words have different definitions depending on who you talk to. That's why speaking to the person and not just assuming that they're an asshole is so important, because it gives that person a chance to define what they are trying to say. Let's define our terms here. So if I'm having a conversation with Steve and he says something that I don't understand or don't agree with, or basically saying, hey, you might have screwed the pooch on this one, I ask him about it. And I ask him about it. We go over it. And when it came to the definition of engineer, I disagreed with him at first. But then I saw, no, I mean it in this way. And I'm like, okay, well, if you mean it in this way specifically, then yes, you are right.
And by the way, one of the reasons why Red is my bestie and why he knows me better than anybody else and why I have the utmost respect for him is that for the entire time I've been on YouTube, if I've known him for what, 5 years now, I guess now, this is how we operate with each other. We come to each other and we'll ask, we'll have conversations and we'll clarify. We've never had an argument, right? We've never we had disagreements, but we never fought. We've never had any kind of hostility, zero, because we could communicate with each other on an adult level. And that's what I want to see from other people.
Yeah,
I don't see it from other people a lot of times.
Now keep in mind, I still think that the word engineer has multiple definitions.
Right, I agree with that.
And based on that, Casey is indeed an engineer. But here's the thing. Let's hypothetically say that Steve disagreed with me completely on that. I know one thing besides the fact that we disagree. And that one thing is that none of this shit is coming from a bad place with Steve. And that's what people need to understand. People need to stop being so fucking easily offended and actually listen to the guy. Yeah, and then maybe
I'm an asshole for saying something rather than ask me why, right?
Yeah. So basically use that charity and branch out and be like, okay, Steve, I'm branching out to you. Let's go ahead and discuss this. What do you mean by that? Oh, and by the way, how you approach Steve also matters. If you go to Steve as an asshole, he's more likely to be an asshole back. I'm sorry, it's just human nature at this fucking point.
Yeah, come at me sideways, and I'm not going to be your too receptive to what you have to say to me, right? But people that have come to me in earnest, and people coming to me with respect, I'm going to give it back to them. I give what I get. I've said this forever. I don't know why it's so controversial, but actually, like your whole thing about the controversy, Red's really kind of nailed it. The fact that people don't give me principle of charity. People will automatically assume what I'm saying is wrong and take it from a bad place. That's why there's controversy. That's why there's people out there that dislike me. That's why there's people that still to this day will say very pejorative things and say argue things I don't argue. They will say, hey, look, Steve's just an idiot. He doesn't know logic. He doesn't know this. And yet you ask them anything about these subjects, they draw a blank, right?
Yeah. I have I've spoken to individuals who shall remain unnamed that have said that that Steve McRae is wrong on X, Y, or Z. So basically, I said, hey, listen, I have a channel. I have the ability to make hangouts, and Steve kind of owes me for a lot of shit. So I can definitely get him on, and you can discuss it with him directly. You can go ahead and bring this up, and you know what? Debate him on it. Bring your best argument for why you believe what you believe against Steve and why Steve is wrong and so on. And guess how many people who are really gun-ho about Steve being an asshole or Steve being a coward or Steve being whatever. Guess how many people took me up on that offer?
Zero.
I'm going to guess 0.
Goose egg.
Well, by the mere fact that there is no such hangout on my channel, I guess process of elimination becomes very easy at that point.
Yeah, we're smart. Yeah, no, and look, I've offered the same thing. Like, I got a debate this Friday on Modern Day Debates channel with a guy named Jared, and I know very little about this guy. He told me a little about his reasoning. It was sufficiently well written enough for me to go, okay, you're not the Duke, right? Because if you guys remember the Duke Modern Day Debate, that debate that I had with him, I felt like I was kicking a cripple kid. I mean, the guy just
Duke Bonanza?
The Duke. No, not Duke Bonanza.
I don't know
the
Duke.
The Duke Bonanza is okay. No, the Duke is that guy that I debated on Modern Day Debates channel. He was just inept. And so this other guy wanted to discuss the same kind of topic, but he seemed like he at least was a little more on the ball. So I'm going in blind, but I don't mind that because I think that this particular topic I'm pretty well versed on, at least to the point where I feel comfortable enough to talk about it with anybody.
What is the topic?
Atheism and agnosticism, the same thing,
All right, but is you said Jared? Is Jared and Christian or?
No, he's an atheist.
Okay.
And you don't see like Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Ron, all these guys jumping at the chance to come after me, although they say I'm wrong, but they'll jump after a theist, right? They'll jump after anybody they can. No offense to theists, but the reality is you're not going to say, hey, look, here's God, right? They know this, right? So they always fall back to, prove God exists or demonstrate to me God exists. It's hyperbole, right? And I think it's straw manning, but they know that's never going to happen. They cannot lose a debate on that particular topic because no theist is ever going to say, show them God, just like no atheist is never going to show God does not exist. I don't think that's going to happen, right? So they have an advantage, but when it comes to me, that has the evidence, that has the citations, and stuff like that, what advantage do they have to debate me or discuss things with me? There is none, right?
I mean, yes, that is a possibility. I don't want to jump to the conclusion that they are outright scared of you.
No,
but,
I'm not saying that. It's just an advantage to them to do so.
So you just brought up Aaron Ra though. Are you and he on good terms?
Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I like Aaron, right? I mean, we just fundamentally disagree with this, but he told me that if I'm right, his entire life's work is for naught. And I'm like, so hyperbolic. And we were talking about logic, and I had actual logicians on my page going, Aaron, what you're saying is not correct. It's just not right. He didn't even know what a double negation was. And it's like he's trying to argue things above his pay grade on these subjects. And it comes up as very foolish to people that do know these topics, because I'm telling him, look, you don't have to believe me, but why is it every other person who knows these topics is also telling you're wrong on this? There's a reason for this, Aaron. I'm sorry, and he doesn't want to talk about it, which is fine. But doesn't I don't know why he blocked me on it. I don't know.
He blocked you?
Well, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to speak to.
He rattled his cage.
Well, I'm not going to speak to Aaron here. I'm just going to say that Aaron definitely did not give Steve the charity that I was referring to. None. So whether or not Aaron is scared to lose his entire life's work, I guess. Okay, if you want to go ahead and put it that way, that's fine. But at the same time, the principle of charity still applies. It still applies in every single aspect, because you can't just say, how about this? I respectfully refuse your debate, but would love to talk to you about other subjects. That's perfectly fine.
That's what I would expect somebody to do. Look at Steve. We're never going to agree on this. Let's just not talk about the subject and focus on explaining to people why young Earth creationism, right? That's what I would think a person should do. But you have a lot of people whispering in Aaron's ear. You have people whispering in Matt's ear. You have people whispering in Kyle's ear. You have people whispering all over the place. And these little, I'm going to call them like chihuahuas because they're nipping at my ankles. They're the ones that are causing a lot of discord because, again, as Red said, first, they don't know anything about these topics, but they're not giving me principle of charity, not giving me the respect to come at me straight on and say, Steve, I think you're wrong. Let me show you why. And I offer people the opportunity to do that. They can come on my channel anytime. The only people I block that do that are trolls. And Reds knows who I am, and he knows why I do this, right?
Yeah.
He knows there's a reason for why certain people are not allowed to come on my channel and have discussion with. It's not because I'm scared of them. If somebody else wants to use their arguments, by all means, but it's just because I do not talk to certain people.
Yeah, it should also be noted here that if, for example, you are kind of annoyed with the subject, like for example, I'm kind of annoyed with the whole definition of atheism debate. I am really fucking annoyed with the definition of atheism debate. You words cannot describe how annoyed I am that this is still
you and I don't bother with that topic. We just don't talk about it.
Steve, you shut your whore mouth so I can tell people how annoyed I am that this shit is still going on. But the thing is,
I think it's Steve's favorite subject.
Yeah, I know it's his favorite subject, and it annoys the shit out of me. So basically, instead of me getting mad at Steve, I just say, "Hey, Steve, I don't give a shit. Can we just move on to something else?" And guess what? It was great. It was great ever since then.
We haven't ever discussed it, have we?
No, never.
It's not a topic that's relevant between us. It's completely irrelevant. We have other things that we'll discuss and harp on and go after people with. I mean, Reds is like the greatest debunker of flat Earth on YouTube. I mean, there is no one better. That's the stuff that I'd rather focus on if that's what I'm going to be going on Red's channel with, right? I don't want to talk about atheism. I don't give a crap. I want to show people why the Earth isn't flat and why they're idiots, just like Reds does. Right?
I just don't even get the logic behind the Earth is flat. I mean, do they actually think the whole world is under this conspiracy? It's just crazy. So they think that like Sputnik, I mean, all the stuff that we have as evidence of the Earth that's a globe. it's insane.
They are insane.
Yeah, they are insane. Let me go ahead and give you just an example of what I got yesterday. The sun is an interdimensional portal, and light does not travel.
Mm-hmm. Like Pac-Man's sun.
Yeah.
Didn't you have somebody on who drinks his own urine too?
Yeah, we had a couple. Yeah, well, we had Dave, the free man on the land, and I think there's another one too.
Pancho Pete.
Pancho Pete drinks his own pee, and I'm pretty sure. I know I saw a video with Patricia Steer, Mark Sargent, and a bunch of other people doing it as well.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I will quick. I know we're getting late here. I don't want. But there's two things I want to touch on. One, I want to screen share real quick. I want to show you what somebody wrote on my Facebook page because I told them I would, and they're going to be watching this. He's a mathematician. The reason I wanted to show this is because these are the kind of messages I get daily. I have been getting inundated with messages saying, Steve, thank you for all you do. Thank you for explaining these things. I'm now on your side. My numbers are going up tremendously. My Patreon's starting to go up. I have a lot of messages. Now, I don't show private messages, so I had this person put something on my public Facebook page. And so I'm going to read this. We'll come and screen share it. He writes, it is obvious to me that your detractors have a fundamental misunderstanding of how logic works. Two propositions can be a dichotomy without the belief in the proposition being a dichotomy. It's the belief in the proposition that throws out having to choose one or the other. It's really a basic concept, and I'm actually surprised that so many people do not understand it. Others' ability to grasp a concept doesn't change the fact that you are right, though, concerned mathematician. And this is what I get from actual experts all the time. This is what I get from people that know these topics, is that I'm not incorrect on these things. I'm not wrong. I am explaining them the way they are in philosophy. I'm explaining them the way they are in the literature. I've read these papers. Nothing I say is controversial from a philosophical standpoint. This is why I have Grandma Oppie come on. This is why I have Dr. Alex Malpass. This is why I have numerous people that know these topics. Not one of them is going around going, Steve's wrong. Not one expert I can find can say this. I had one person come on my channel or in live chat claiming to be an expert, but when I asked him for his actual credentials to come on to show me an email, I got nothing, right? So I don't play that game, right? Because I think he was trolling because they had multiple fake accounts. But if you are an actual expert on these topics and you think that I'm wrong, I will be glad to have a conversation with you.
And that's why I went to Steve, because sometimes people have challenged me on my philosophical understanding. So I'm like, okay, let me I'll get right back to you. So I asked Steve, hey Steve, did I get the the genetic fallacy wrong? I remember when I was asking about that, and like, actually no, you hit it square on the center. All right, hang on 1 second, Steve. Hit redial. Wait for it. I fucking told you.
He asked me. Yeah, I get people ask me my opinion, right? But again, I don't tell people. Look at, people have a weird thing about this, and it drives me freaking nuts. And stop doing it, especially Matt Dillahunty does it. I don't cite experts to say that I'm right. Okay, that's not why I do it. It is an appeal to authority. It's a legitimate appeal to authority. What I cite experts to do is to show that there is a consilience on these things and to show support for my arguments. I have never, ever argued that because these experts think I'm right, I am right. That is a fallacy. That is a argumentative
appeal to authority.
Argumentative vericurnium. So that is a logical fallacy. I would never do that, right? But you're allowed in philosophy to cite experts who agree with you for academic support. That's how you write a paper.
Yeah, and also to be clear on this, basically telling someone to exercise caution is not a fallacy, and it never will be. And anyone who says such a thing is kind of an idiot. And that's what Steve is doing. Steve is basically saying, hey, exercise caution on your assertion, because we have a lot of people that are coming to my side and not yours. Wow. Again, not saying that makes me 100% right on this, but right. It's just to tell you to exercise caution before proceeding further. So if you get blown up by a goddamn grenade on a logic bomb, guess what? You have no one to blame but yourself. Yeah, Matt Dillahunty did this, and I want to end this with the burden of proof real quick, because I mentioned earlier to SJ that I wanted to touch on it because I think it's very important. Matt Dillahunty had said the reason why he blocked me on Facebook, and bear in mind, I have never talked to Matt Dillahunty that I'm aware of on Facebook, right? I didn't know that even read any of my stuff. I don't have a Facebook, so I can't verify.
I don't even know if I knew you could block on Facebook. I never really get it.
Yeah, you can block on Facebook. So he read something that I wrote where I was trying to show that I had all these experts that, support me and that understand, more than that, they understand what I write. Because I have people calling me word salad. I have people saying that Steve just, doesn't always talk about it, just throws words out there. And I have these educated people, multiple PhDs, that understand what I'm saying, right? So it's not word salad. And then I have these 5 people that I knew of, right? That were just like people that worked at Walmart and people that, like a DJ. And I wasn't disparaging them. I even said, look, these are great professions. I'm not saying anything against their profession, but I'm saying that they've never read a paper on any of these topics, right? And yet they're telling me that I'm wrong. Probabilistically, what is more likely the case? If the experts are understanding me and the people that don't read about these things are telling me they don't understand me, and yet it's all word salad, what is more likely? That was the argument that I was going for. And that's no different than saying, look at Sygart, for example, is a biochemist. If he tells somebody, hey, look, your understanding of DNA is wrong, what's more likely? Him telling you that, or somebody like Reg Rhetoric who doesn't know shit all from DNA, right? I mean, there's a reason why we listen to people that know what they're talking about. Because if Reg started talking about biology to somebody like you, SJ, and started saying, SJ, you're just wrong about your biology, I'd be like, Reg, you may want to dial it back. Because Reg's he's not into biology, right? But he tells you about flat Earth. Yeah, you damn well better listen to him. I don't give a shit about biology. I don't give a shit about evolution. I really don't. My forte is like space and us doing shit in space. That's that. And also basic freaking geometry. So, yes, basic geometry. I'm talking like middle school level geometry. When you look at what Steve McRae does, he backs up everything that he says. And to anyone that has said that he's wrong and also been a colossal douche canoe while saying that he's wrong, that I'm pretty sure Steve McRae is open to challenging you guys and having you guys basically make your case. Although while you're making it, try to have it be respectful is all I can say. Otherwise, you're going to get your shit kicked in sideways, and I will thoroughly enjoy that. Yeah, and here's the thing. I ask everybody to ever go and review any of the things I've ever talked about with anybody. Have you ever noticed that I can think maybe one time somebody did and they misunderstood it a couple times, but have you ever seen any of these people cite me academic sources? Have you ever seen any of them give me a paper that they've read? Any of them?
I never see that.
Never. You never do see it. You'll see it in biology, right? We'll talk about evolution. People throw papers in and out, right? We'll talk about younger creations. People throw things out there every so often, right? Like even if it's not a peer review paper, at least people try. They'll throw out Dr. Thompson's work. They'll throw out, the younger creationist work, which are not my paper, my opinion, real papers, but they at least are trying. But when it comes to these discussions on atheism and agnosticism, not a single person I can recall this year, at least for sure, has given me anything. Not one citation.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to read it. You asked me yesterday. You said, "Hey, can we mention this in the thing?" So what J Rod wrote.
Yeah.
So he said, J Rod said this on Twitter. He said, speaking about Steve, he said, because he actually has some common sense and is not afraid to not back down on an unpopular but correct idea. I'm a theist and have learned more about actual philosophy from him than any atheist out there, and I watch quite a few. So that was pretty nice.
And that's the greatest compliment I can get, right? I mean, that literally is the greatest compliment I can get, that whether you're a theist or an atheist, that you've learned something.
Yep, and quite honestly, anytime I learn something new, I see that as a great day. Why shouldn't we strive for something like that? That's what conversations can actually do. But people are so quick to just assume the worst, no charity given whatsoever. And granted, there are some people out there that have lost that charity for very good reasons. But when it came to all the shit being thrown in Steve McRae's direction, in my honest opinion, I don't think they were for very good reasons. If charity was not being given out, they were definitely not for very good reasons. And I think people should reevaluate at this point. They should reevaluate why they're not giving him charity and maybe reconsider. Yeah.
And SJ, how about we do this? We're going on 90 minutes now, and I like this to be kind of easily digestible. I would be thrilled and honored, if everything's okay, to come back for part 2 to dive more in like the burden of proof. And
I love that.
Take questions and things of that nature. Because I find that people watch these videos if they're shorter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if the audience is okay with that and you're okay with that, I would love to come back for part 2 and then get into like why atheists have a burden of proof, whether you're a lack belief atheist or you're a positive belief atheist. Why I do argue that, which is one of the most controversial things out there right now, I think, in these atheist groups I have been told, people that are like, I have this Arkansas group, Arkansas atheist something or other. They sit at Denny's or whatever and they drink coffee and talk about my arguments. I'm thrilled.
That's
with that.
interesting.
Right. And yet, the people that I talk to that are epistemologists and the philosophers, they're just like, well, yeah, Steve's not saying anything that controversial. This is how, we view it as well. And I'm trying to explain to people that this narrative that these American atheists and atheist community of Austin saying, well, atheists don't have a burden of proof at all, is completely fundamentally wrong. But this narrative that atheists as a lack of belief position doesn't have one, that's a little more debatable or at least discussable. But I have very good argumentative reasons why I believe that and why I have citations to back that up from actual atheist philosophers, right? But I think you have to be really out there left field to say, and I do know atheists that do this, say, well, look at, I claim there's no God, but I don't have a burden of proof. What? What?
Repeat that to me.
That isn't even worth discussing. That is like flat earth level bad, right? So, but anyways,
never go.
No, I think that's, maybe we can do it in the next week or so. If you'd like.
And by the way, I do argue agnosticism has a burden of proof, by the way, and so does Dr. Malik. Agnosticism does have a burden of proof, and I will get into that, what that burden of proof is, and I will be happy to explain it. I've done it before about what I have to do to meet my burden of proof for agnosticism. It's not that difficult, but it's something that people have to think about. Why do you hold a particular position? Why do you hold agnosticism? That is a burden of proof. Why can't you make a decision? That's, as Bert Poole brilliantly points out, because God, that man's smart. He says, stop going after Steve on the technical stuff. You're going to lose. Go after Steve about why he doesn't formulate a position on the proposition of God, and he's right on that. That's what people.
Interesting. Yeah, so we'll have to talk about that too next time. So, well, great. And Reds, you're always welcome to come back too, if you'd like to join us. So we have a continuation of this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you for putting up with my potty mouth. I appreciate it.
It's all good. It's all good. Well, thank you everybody who's been here. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast.
All right.
Actually, let me ask first, Reds, I've got Steve's links down there below in the conversation here, so people can link into his channel. But if you'd like to send me your information, I can also link yours as well. And if you want to let everyone know how to find you, that'd be great.
Sure. The channel is Red's Rhetoric, spelled exactly how it sounds. I post rocket launch videos and other stuff that pisses off flat earthers, so check it out.
Great. And Steve, did you want to share any information on where to find you?
Well, you put the links in the video description. Come join me on my personal channel, Steve McRae on YouTube. We have great conversations with a lot of people late at night. Come join us on Non Sequitur Show, where we have all kinds of discussions with experts and lay people. One of the fastest growing shows on YouTube. Come find the Great Debate Community on Facebook. It is a continuation of the Great Debate Community from G+. G+ is no longer around, so we had to migrate to somewhere else. We are on MeWe. Bull and just kind of taking care of that, but I'm promoting the one on Facebook. We're only at like 550 so far, but yeah, I'll tell you what, it's going to grow, because what I'm finding out is that people are sick and tired of Facebook groups not allowing dialogue. And the Great Debate Community, we allow dialogue. We have certain rules. Don't get me wrong, it's not completely freestyle, because I want people to be better at arguing. And if they're just going to argue by meme, you're not welcome, right? You need to have a discussion and have an adult conversation. So come join us and subscribe and like to this channel too. And I want to thank SJ for inviting me on. I'm very humbled.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I had a nice time talking to you today, and it's always been a good time when I talk to you. So we'll do this again very soon to continue. Thank you, everybody.